And we can just dance the night away until we get no more. I'll shake all the hurt away so you can feel and forget who you used to be. For just tonight, could you just dance the night away?
If guilt feels like the only thing keeping you on track, of course, letting go of that feels terrifying. This is a 5-part series where I want to look at the guilt that we have after eating. This episode is going to be about why letting go of dieting feels scary when guilt is kind of the control that we use to keep us in check. So we may have beliefs that sound like if I stop feeling guilty, I'll lose control. Or maybe there's a fear of spiraling and eating everything if we stop feeling guilty about our food choices. And maybe guilt feels weirdly safe because that's maybe what we know. We feel safe in what feels familiar, right? That's just all humans. We're comfortable and we are safe with what we know, even if it's maybe not the best thing for us. And change is scary. And letting go of what we think is helping us or what we think is the solution can feel really scary. So, why is this happening? If we don't want to feel guilty after eating, then why do we? Right? Part of it is the belief that we have, which we will get to in the next part, but we are stuck with this guilt because guilt has been acting almost as a behavior regulator for us, right? We can't just say to ourselves, stop feeling guilty, right? That's just not how it works. That guilt is showing up for a reason because of the beliefs that we have. And so it's not really like, oh, just stop feeling guilty. Yeah, you can't just say, oh, just stop feeling that way because those feelings are there for a reason. And so, in a way, guilt tries to keep us in line or following these rules that we have, which we may think we want the rules because we're trying to lose a certain amount of weight or feel better about how we look or achieve a certain body size. But when we feel guilt for doing something we perceive as wrong or we feel like we're failing, we may use that guilt to try and be better the next time, right? If we feel like we're going to try harder the next time, that can feel like control. And maybe guilt is a motivator of like, oh, I felt so guilty about this. Now I'm going to do way better, right? And we almost use that to motivate ourselves or think that's going to be the solution to trying harder next time or having more willpower next time. So if guilt keeps us controlled, then what would happen if we didn't feel guilty, right? That maybe does feel really scary. But the cost right now today and the impact of hanging on to onto this guilt could mean that we're staying dependent on shame to try and drive our behavior change. When we feel guilt, we may feel like a failure or that we have done something wrong. And so if we try to shame ourselves or punish ourselves to try and get the desired result, we think that's going to work. But we never change because of shame, right? We're never going to change our behavior long term because of shame. That's just not how we work. And the cost of this is that it's eroding our sense of self-trust, right? In healthy relationships, using shame or punishment, it isn't nurturing and it's not productive long term, right? Maybe you can use shame short term to get the results you want, but not without a lasting negative impact on yourself. This also doesn't allow for real self trust to be built up. If what your body does is perceived as wrong or as bad, then you try to disconnect from yourself to try and follow these rules more, right? You don't feel like you can trust your body, and so you try to ignore it. And maybe an example of that is that if you're dieting and you feel hunger, right, you try to suppress that hunger. Maybe you don't even know when you're hungry, right? You try to disconnect yourself from these cues that you have because you want to lose weight, because you don't want to feel hungry. And so that is creating this disconnection and this self-trust isn't being built up. And then if we feel guilt about something that we did and we shame ourselves, that again is going to be just kind of creating this cycle where we're not trusting ourselves, we're not listening to ourselves, we're shaming ourselves, we feel guilty, and just kind of we're spending a lot of time feeling really bad towards ourselves. And trust requires internal safety. But how can we feel safe in ourselves when we are judging what we're eating, how much we're eating, if we try to punish ourselves, shame ourselves, and then we're still feeling guilty, right? That's not creating a lot of internal safety within ourselves. Guilt also creates a cycle of breaking down our own promise because guilt often leads to maybe thinking, I'll be better tomorrow, or I need to make up for this. And so, what that does is it creates a pattern where we eat, then we feel guilty. Maybe we make a really strict plan after that, we break the plan, and then we feel even worse about ourselves. And so, each time that this happens, your brain is thinking, I just can't trust myself to follow through. And guilt can keep you reacting instead of coming from a place of making your own choices, right? The decisions that you make can feel reactive and not intentional, and self trust grows when you can choose, respond, and adjust. But guilt is kind of creating this all or nothing thinking of I'm either being good or I'm messing up. And at a deep layer, it also reinforces the belief that I need to control myself because I'm out of control. I need to control as much as I can because if not, I'm going to be out of control. So it kind of reinforces that idea. And so guilt can make you feel like you're the problem, right? You can't be trusted around food. You need stricter rules. So you double down on control, right? And this control and this managing and this guilt, this can be so exhausting for us. So, how can we reframe, right? A reframe we could practice here is guilt isn't control, it's pressure. And pressure always backfires. Or we could think, self trust isn't built by eating perfectly, but by how you respond to yourself after you eat. So, those could be some reframes. Or another one could be so instead of asking, what's wrong with me? Building trust could look like asking yourself, what might I have needed there? Right? If we go back to maybe I binged, maybe I overate, maybe I felt out of control around food. Maybe you could think back to that moment or in the moment, ask yourself, what am I needing? What did I need back then? And kind of have some curiosity and compassion towards yourself when you're asking those questions. So, in real life, we could practice and experiment with making one food choice without punishment. We can notice that nothing catastrophic actually happens. So, if you zoom out, this is why letting go of guilt can feel so scary because it's not just about the food. It's about learning how to be on your own side without using shame as the tool, right? And it's a completely different way of relating to yourself, which may be unfamiliar. And unfamiliarity is scary. And that's why it can be this fear. But we can learn to relate to ourselves differently. And I think in the long run, we'll see that using curiosity and compassion and building up self-trust within ourselves is going to be something that's worth pushing through the discomfort for.